You are now tuned into the sounds of
Big Nate Sports Talk.
It's on all the time, anytime.
Tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the next big thing, the latest up-and-coming sports journalist, your host, Nathan Snell.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope you had a great week. Hope you do something fun this weekend. Stay warm. Stay dry. This is season 15, episode 1 of the podcast. We're moving right along. Cannot believe 15 seasons. Before we get into it, there's a few things I'd say up front. I would like to, as you heard in that intro right there, I'd like to give Anthony Handy a very special shout out. We've branded what Big Nate Sports Talk is and what it will be. My life, my dream is to be a sports journalist, and I really am proud of the growth and the opportunities I've taken to be in this field. I know it's not easy. There are days where it can get frustrating, especially when you're considered now a beat writer for a team, and you have to make sure you meet deadlines and even trying to get interview requests. So as the season progresses, my goal is to get more involved in more realms of those areas. Last year we interviewed Erica McCall. That was a great opportunity, but this year I definitely want to get in touch with some more college athletes and even more pro athletes. So that's my goals for the podcast. Season 14, the episodes, we'll have those downloaded, uploaded within the next week or so. We're still working on some cosmetic things with the podcast. We did make some changes, like as you've seen, but we're not finished yet. So hopefully before the month of April, probably before April's even over period, we'll have all the changes complete. We did change our last segment, and that'll be a surprise. I think you guys will like that a little bit. When we cleaned it up a little bit, we changed the name and everything. So I think you'll like that. WNBA mock draft, not WNBA mock draft. The WNBA draft occurred Monday. Great draft. Some questionable draft. There was some interesting draft picks. The grades are complete. That video will be recorded tonight. I had to go back and I had to make sure I did thoroughly, at the teams, what they needed, what they had, what they needed to address. Went back and did that. NFL Mock Draft 2.0 is everything's done. Just need to record the video and we're ready to go. We will do one more before the week before the draft. And then we're going to do an off-season NFL edition, AFC and NFC edition. I have that video recorded tomorrow, which is Sunday. But In this video, we are previewing the NBA playoffs. The play-in games ended last night with the Miami Heat getting the final seed and the Minnesota Timberwolves getting the final seed as well. So this is the Eastern Conference edition. The Western Conference edition will also be recorded, but let's get into it. I really am looking forward to this matchup, Boston Celtics versus the Atlanta Hawks. First and foremost, I really am not a fan of some of the things that occurred this season for the Hawks. When you're hearing Trae Young might be traded. First and foremost, I didn't think the Hawks, from what they were, they were in the conference finals. Disappointing. I think DeJounte Murray and Trae Young are great players, but for small market teams, I'm just going to get my soapbox. You can't pay everybody. The Hawks are kind of now in this position where do you start all over again? Because you're going to have to pay Trae Young money eventually. But I think the way they've kind of messed up the process, I don't know. I think Trae's proven he can be that guy. I think it's what you have around him. I think also too, they need someone like a Mike Brown, for example, or they need somebody like a coach that's going to take them from here to here. I think the Hawks have the talent to compete for a championship. It's just I didn't think they're stuck. And then they didn't really expand on the conference final appearance. I kind of felt like, okay, well, we got there, and just like, it's okay. The last time these two teams met, Boston swept the regular season series 3-0. For me, I think the keys are I'm going to be watching Trae Young. And we all know where he, leads this offense. To me, he's the key. But I'm going to watch him not only offensive, but on the defense side of the ball. Boston has an offense that can be good with ball movement. But they like to also attack the weakest defender. And Atlanta's defender who's not the strongest, is Trae Young. So I'm going to be curious to see how they're going to go at him, particularly with Jason Tatum, pick and roll, and how they switch or how they pick and roll, pick and pop. I'm curious to see how they'll do that. I'm also curious to see if the type of defense Atlanta will come out with. I think they need to come out, I would say, with a zone defense, honestly. That lineup may need to go a little bigger. I might actually need to go smaller, honestly, in my opinion. But I'm curious to see how they'll look on the Atlanta on the defensive side, how Boston will attack them. When you look at Atlanta, I think it's going to come down to rebounding the ball. I think they're probably one of the best rebounding teams in the league, led by Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. I think they're just efficient offensive boards. I think crashing the glass offensively is going to be key. South Boston led the defensive rebound percentage, I believe, the regular season. And I think Atlanta has 19 second chance points. So I'm curious to see how both teams look on the defensive glass and the offensive glass. I think that's the key. I just think when you look at both teams, I think Boston clearly is the better team. Especially you have a guy like Al Horford who can just shoot the ball. He's not the greatest three-point shooter, but this year he shot almost 45%. And I can see Boston being a team where they're going to shoot a lot of threes, especially on the driving kick sequence, for example. So you could have Al Horford on the wing or, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Those guys are going to be really shooting the lights out the ball. I think that that's going to be key. I still think the key for Boston is Robert Williams. Um, he only played 35 games. If I'm saying that correctly, and the last 18 games. Um, when he's on the floor, he's their strongest. They're stronger, especially when he and Al Horford are out there. Um, this may not be a series for him because, especially um, when you have 5 shooters in the lineup, I could see that for him. Um, but I'm curious to see. I could see Al Horford playing the 5, honestly. Um, but I could see Boston using him. So I'm curious to see the type of lineup they'll put out there. But keeping him healthy is definitely going to be key in this one. But I just think for me, Boston is just a better team. As I said, they're more well-rounded. They've got a better talent. Um, I'm not going to go as far as saying Atlanta gets swept. I think DeJounte Murray, Trey Young, Capella, I think they're great enough to at least get you one game. Um, I can't see a sweep. I just think, especially when you're at home, watching Atlanta last year in the playoffs, especially, um, they're not going to go down without a fight. When you look at Boston, they are ranked second in offensive and defensive efficiency. Um, it's interesting. They're third team to do that. The last time was Golden State, which was the 2014, 2015, and 2016, 2017. If I'm saying that correctly. Both won the championship, painfully. But I'm rolling with the Celtics in this series. I think they'll win one game. I just think that there's just that Boston doesn't have any weaknesses. On the starting 5, no rotation. I mean, they are on both sides of the ball are just immaculate with the ball. And to me, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, that's a tandem duo. Now, I think Jaylen Brown will be fine. I know he got 5 stitches in his hand. He'll be fine. But I'm going to say that the Boston Celtics beat the Atlanta Hawks in 5.
Guaranteed.
We're going to go next to the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. This is a team that doesn't have Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and Ben Simmons. This is probably one of the most interesting Brooklyn Nets teams I've seen. From where they were a foot away, not last year, the year before, getting to the finals, and didn't happen. And kind of see how things occurred this year, and how that, honestly, that's the second. I guess I will call it a super team where it failed. Honestly, remember a few years ago they had Darren Williams, Brooke Lopez, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Joe Johnson. That didn't work, and now you brought in James Harden, who you traded to Philadelphia, Kyrie Irving traded to Dallas, and then Kevin Durant traded to Phoenix, and then Ben Simmons, who I don't know. At this point, I feel like it's all mental with him. But when you look at this series, the Sixers have won all 4 games, swept them. And I feel like, especially with this group by Brooklyn, especially in the second half of the season, after trading line, they held on to this number 6 seed. Mikal Bridges, who I think next year I believe he'll be an all-star. He averaged almost 27 points in the first 23 games as a Brooklyn Net. But you're going up against a Philadelphia team that I just think is on both ends of the floor, just good with the ball. And especially one of an MVP candidate in Joel Embiid, you got shooters around him. I'm disappointed, you won't see, for Brooklyn, those guys. But Ben Simmons won't be in this series because he's out with a back issue. And clearly, Joel Embiid is the best player in this series. But I think there could be some motivation there. So for me, my keys to watching this series is I'm going to be watching closely how they defensively will do enough on how they'll guard Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid to me, other than Nikola Jokic, and then Giannis probably are honestly the last post players that I've seen in the league so far. Nick Claxton is going to have his work cut off for him. They do, if you watched, especially in Doc Rivers' system, Joel Embiid and James Harden, they have this way of switching on screens, particularly. It's crazy where they have a small defender on him. And it kills me. I get bothered by it because that on the defensive side, teams, they don't see it and they don't make the adjustment. So I'm going to be curious to see how that looks. Particularly in the last game where they faced each other, I think Joel Embiid had 37 points taken, and it just killed them. Especially on that especially if you're going to on a pick and roll, you want to try to hedge as hard as you can, but also to switch. But I wouldn't be mad if they brought a double team on Joel where he had to kick it out, because the other guys are going to have to beat us if I'm Brooklyn. But we can say Brooklyn look defensively on that. I don't think Philadelphia has any weaknesses. Mikal Bridges is going to do his thing, but I don't think they have anybody in the rotation that, just like Boston, there's just no one that has a weak spot. I think your half-court offense will be the key in this series. Especially for a guy who's been, other than Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't know what this obsession with Kyle Kuzma and the Washington Wizards. He's a combo guard. It didn't work out. Me personally, I didn't like the trade, but you're not playing for the Wizards anymore. You're playing for the Brooklyn Nets. I let it go. We'll be watching him this whole series too, because he's definitely a player that one game will play really, really good, and the next game you can't find him. It's going to be up to, other than Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie is also the key to this series, because they're going to need his they're going to need his ISO playmaking. They're going to need his scoring playmaking. They're going to need him, period. And then also too, interesting enough, there's actually some times where I've watched Sixers when Joel Embiid's not on the floor. They look like a completely different team. And some of that I can say is I think they've been confident with Joel out there on the floor, but this is where I really emphasize you got to have depth, particularly behind him. And kind of curious to see how they'll look, because I don't like Brooklyn's bench, period. I don't think they did enough to address that in the deadline. And I really think that he really shouldn't, especially if you're up like 10, 15 points and the game's out of reach, Joel Embiid shouldn't be out there. So I'm curious to see how Doc will look with that rotation, because Brooklyn, their bench is just not good. It's not. And then Doc Rivers is got to just make sure he just rotates his players, especially if you're going the 4 down alongside James Harden. But I think it's going to come down to, for me, the biggest one is Brooklyn's 3-point shooting. I think that's truly the key. I think it got better, especially once Kevin Durant and Kyrie left. I think they're going to. They're just not. They don't have the strength inside other than Claxton. Um, the half court offense is going to be the. It's going to be the. It's going to have to get them. It's going to have to win them games. I think they're now the 16th. They're like around the top 20, and that's before the trade. And then they were jumped right into like the top 10. I think they're like number 5 or number 6. I think it was like 44%, if I saw that stat correctly. So I'm curious to see how that 3-point shooting will look. So you live by the 3 and you die by the 3, unfortunately. But I really think, unfortunately, this just 1-2. I just think when you look at they did win 45 games for a reason, but at least 30, I'll say 30 of those wins came from KD and Kyrie. Other than that, if you look at it, they're just like a middle of the road team. And I don't think I don't want to say that they're a weak 6 seed, but they're not the strongest 6 seed. And I think that Philadelphia I'm predicting the Philadelphia 76ers will sweep the Brooklyn Nets.
Guaranteed.
I don't see Brooklyn winning a game. I think they'll keep it close, but I don't think they have the bench. Other than Claxton, you got Spencer Dinwiddie, but Mikal Bridges. It's going to be interesting to watch how they look. So that's going to be interesting. But let's get into the sponsor of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast, and that is Zagnif Apparel. Do you want to dress like you're famous, ladies and gentlemen? Then why don't you go and check out Zagnif Apparel, where you can and you will dress like you're famous.
The following is a presentation of Zagnif Productions, LLC. Introducing Zagnif Apparel. Our comfortable line of leisure wear and athletic wear will have you comfortable and stylish at any occasion. Whether you're at the gym, out shopping, or just relaxing at home. Whether you're an athlete or just want to lay around the house, we've got the perfect outfit for you. Stop by our website today and pick up your favorite pieces. Zagnif Apparel. Dress like you're already famous.
And you can most certainly dress like you're already famous with a nice 15% off using my code, Big Nate. Again, 50% off using Big Nate as a code when you check out Zagnif Apparel. Great merchandise. Thank you for Zagnif Apparel for being a sponsor of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. Before we get into the last two preview matches for the Eastern Conference, let's get another break in there, ladies and gentlemen. And we are back, and we're going to get into the next one. This one I think is going to be interesting. I know Stephen A is jumping for joy. The Cleveland Cavaliers versus the New York Knicks. I'm actually thinking this is actually going to be one of probably my favorite matchup to watch. We all know Donovan Mitchell, who I think I would consider an MVP candidate, in my opinion. I really think the trade in the Cleveland, I think, has definitely made a change. I'm actually liking that trade for Cleveland. They really, really surprised me the hell out of me this year. Evan Mobley and those guys. They're really it's this. I think this could really. I could say it's going to come down. I don't want to say go to 7 games, but I'm intrigued by this matchup. You know, the Knicks. They did a lot. To get to this point. I thought getting Jalen Brunson, who I think Dallas is missing, honestly, was a great pickup. Um, Amon quickly, Quentin Grimes, and Josh Hart, and all good pieces. You still had, that Julius Randle and those guys, but to be a 5th seed, this is their second playoff appearance in 10 years, um, and I think they're doing just enough. I think give them another year or two, and then they get another marquee free agent. I think the Knicks could compete for the NBA championship. But Cleveland, you get a guy like Donovan Mitchell, especially. I kind of, and I'm gonna get on my high horse, but I blame the media for kind of ending that relationship in Utah. I felt like that team could have won something. I felt they should have a championship. But when you make fun of a center getting $250 million and saying you don't have what it takes to win and other things like that, I creating those kind of narratives really, really bothers me. But Donovan Mitchell, to me, came out this year, and he's just silenced the critics, averaging 28 points a game. And you just see, excuse me, making the others around him better. Then the Knicks and the Cavs, I believe, won 2 games apiece in this series. And I can tell you from a couple of those things, a lot of it was just good basketball. I'm curious to watch this matchup with, to me, Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. This is what they paid Jalen Brunson for if you're New York. Especially in the first matchup, if I remember correctly watching that game, I think it was Donovan Mitchell put up 38 points in the first meeting. And then the second time, the same matchup, Jalen Brunson had 25. They're not as New York's not a guard dominant ball. Their guards don't dominate the ball like Donovan Mitchell does. And I can see. I'm curious to see in the half court, how does Donovan get, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, those guys going early. Because I can see. I don't want it to come down to where you have to look to Donovan Mitchell to get to bail you out in situations. It's interesting. Same thing with Jalen. I think Jalen, to me, was the key for Dallas beating Utah last year. I think he averaged 28 points, and shot about 48%, 49%, compared to where Donovan shot 40. So I'm curious to see how that matchup will look again. So I really do think that Julius Randle will be the key as well. I know he's been dealing with a couple injuries, but especially the sprained left ankle. I know he got hurt about 2 weeks ago, especially against, I think we were playing Miami at the time. He should be ready to go. But he is the cog he's the cog in the engine for this New York team. Other than Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle takes this team as far as he can take it. I don't think you'll see a performance like last year in the playoffs against Atlanta. I really do think it's going to be a little bit better. And I think he's my key. It's going to come. I'm going to see how that Knicks defense will look against this kind of offense. They average that their Cleveland allows, particularly in the first 4 games, just the way that both offenses and defenses look. Um, I'm curious to see how JB Bickerstaff, um, who has a slow pace. Um, I'm curious to see how he'll change if he's going to change the pace. Um, and then there's Tom Thibodeau. He likes to always have a half court offense set up. So I'm curious to see how those will look. Because their defensive offense ratings for the 4 matchups this season were just ridiculous. But I'm going to say this series goes to 6 games. I'm going to say the Knicks are going to beat the Cavs, only because of a couple things. I think other than Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, I really am looking for, also to the others around them. For example, they got Danny Green, if I'm not mistaken, and he's not. I'm not expecting him to do much, but especially the resume that he has in the postseason, that matters, particularly when his defense and his 3-point shooting. And I don't know. If you had a guy like him, I'm not saying he's a difference maker, but I think the Knicks, to me, have more to play for. Both teams do, but also too, I look at the Knicks at times where they had chances to win, they've struggled. But I feel like without Julius Randle, he's not 100%. It could be a long series for New York. But both these coaches who I respect, they are defensive minded, rim protection. They have the ball movement, particularly from the point guards, are immaculate. I'm curious to see how it's going to come down to offense, who bend but don't break defense, but offensively, how you get others around you going. I really think Evan Mobley might be the difference maker, because especially he can attack you from different spots on the court, and I think there might be a little bit more pressure on Cleveland to especially they have home court advantage, but I'm gonna say the New York Knicks are going to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6.
Guaranteed.
And we're going to move on to this matchup. I'm not really expecting much out of it. The Milwaukee Bucks versus the Miami Heat. 2 years ago, these teams saw each other in the bubble. And since then, a couple things have happened. The Bucks won the championship. Miami Heat. I know past couple of years they've dealt with a lot of things, particularly this year. They dealt with quite a few injuries. Jimmy Butler, particularly, they finished as a top 6 seed, and they did just enough to get into the playoffs, winning 2 play-in games. I still think when you have a team, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, I think you can still compete. The last time these guys saw each other, Milwaukee in the regular season has taken the series 3-1. I really, really think when you look at the Bucks, I think they're the quietest team. I think they're ready. When you have a guy like Giannis, who I think is also an MVP candidate, the Bucks just have a solid starting 5. Brooke Lopez and Chris Middleton, who's coming back healthy. Drew Holiday, who I think is most underrated point guard in the league. And then their bench, it's just immaculate. The defensively, the chemistry, and this core has been together for quite some time now. So I'm curious to see what it looks like. But we all know I really want to see on the offensive and defensive matchup. There's going to be Drew Holiday and Jimmy Butler. Drew Holiday will guard the best players. The defensive will guard the best player on the opponent's team, offensively. I'm curious to see how that'll look. Yeah, when you think of more natural matchups, you think of a Kyle Lowry and Tyler Hero, but again, Drew will guard the best player. Last night, watching Jimmy Butler take over, getting his team, getting the others around him involved, and just being that closer that we know him to be. But Drew Holiday is an on-ball defense. It's just subpar. Watching him again against in the finals, just for a reason. I just think that it's going to be interesting to watch that matchup, offensively, defensively. I can see Jimmy Butler also guarding Drew Holiday. I think also to the factor is Chris Middleton. Some will say Bobby Portis, but I look at Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton last year, painfully, if you remember, he suffered a wrist injury, and Milwaukee lost to Boston in 7. And I feel like he's the key. This year, he's dealt with a lot of nagging injuries, and he's still averaged 20 points, but you need a guy like him that will keep defenses honest and can shoot and space the floor. But I mean, defensively, he's not the same that he was last year, even the year before, but he's my factor. I feel like if he has a good series post run, I think Milwaukee can definitely win the championship. Now, when I look at Bobby Portis, I think he was the X factor to them winning the championship a couple years ago. He's this guy who, watching him as a Washington Wizard, particularly is, for me, their sixth man. But especially in any series, he's just the energy that, especially if the Bucks are down 6, for example, he's just the energy that just gives the momentum towards Milwaukee. Yes, he can shoot. Yes, he brings hustle. He brings all those things. I just feel like, especially when you're going against a guy like Bam Adebayo, that's going to be an interesting matchup. Giannis and Bam. It's definitely going to be a fight on the boards, offensively and defensively. But I think he will, alongside with Brook Lopez, I think those three will wear Miami out, particularly in the paint. But I think also, too, what was a factor in the last night's win against Chicago was Miami's three-point shooting. I think their three-point shooting is going to be the key. We know Tyler Hero can shoot. Max Strus, who tied the record for most threes in a play-in game, that's going to be key. When you watch a team, I think you're going to be facing a Milwaukee team that I don't want to say No, I can say that. They will lock you down and play defense. A lot of floor spacing is going to be needed if you're Miami. The only issue is that Miami, when you I looked at the stats before I started recording the video, they shoot under 35%. And you're going to need Max Strus and Tyler Hero to be efficient. Otherwise, it's going to be a field day trying to get points in the paint especially against a Bobby Portis, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Brook Lopez. Um, it's going to be a field day. And I kind of also too feel like, I need Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson, a lot of people forget about him, especially when we were in the bubble. He played a significant role in that. But knowing how I don't see, and I think that's also going to be curious too, is watching Eric Spoelstra in the rotation. But it's going to be interesting. I really, really think that one thing about the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, excuse me, they have they especially after the first play and loss, Jimmy Butler just said, I'm just paraphrasing it, we just got to get back in there. We just got to fix some things. They're not going to go down without a fight. This team, I think, is great enough to at least get you one game. But really, when you look at how both teams are matched, Milwaukee's the better team. It's going to come down to Miami's offense. I mean, defensively, I don't know how if you're Miami, who other than Bam, how are you slowing down Giannis? How are you spacing out the spacing? If you can't get if you're Jimmy Butler, how are you going to get insured Tyler Hero and Max Strauss? Where are we going to get from them? I don't think, there's no really way to slow him down unless you double team him. And particularly on both sides of the ball, I can't see Miami doing much. I think the Miami Heat will win game, but I'm going to say the Bucks. I'm going to say the Milwaukee Bucks will sweep the Miami Heat.
Guaranteed.
And that's my predictions for the Eastern Conference. We're going to be recording the Western Conference in the next video, but we're going to get into the last part of our podcast, a brand new segment called The Final Thought.
Thoughts are running through my mind, so I took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
This is the final thought. What the final thought is, it's kind of like final message, but my final thought is, this has arguably been probably some of the best playing games. I watched. I actually like this setup, even though I'm not a fan. I wish we go back to the old school way. You're at 8, you make it to the playoffs or you don't, but make teams fight for it. But my final thought is that this was a great season, regular season. The awards are already out. Who's finalists? I really, really would like to have an understanding of what MVP is, because didn't really like some of the conversations that we had, and basically saying, well, because I've always thought MVP was better record, better regular season, maybe better record, right, regular season. Because Steve Nash, for example, right, won MVP twice because they had a better record than the Lakers and the Miami Heat. I believe the year Shaq was on that team. But I've always felt MVP was you have better stats, and again, better regular season. You're the most efficient player on the team. But you can make a case for Jokic, Giannis, Donovan Mitchell, Joel Embiid. But when you look at, okay, for example, the Joker, okay, what he's done is extraordinary. Is extraordinary. Russell Westbrook with the triple doubles was extraordinary. I I think Joel Embiid should be MVP, but it wouldn't faze me if Nikola Jokic won. But I would like a more clearer understanding. What's the criteria for MVP? Because it just seems like same thing we had a same conversation with what an all-star is. I feel like we just flip-flop. But that's actually going to conclude this episode of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate the support you've given me in this channel and the podcast. You can also find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, Big Nate Sports Talk. I would also appreciate it if you leave a review. That will definitely help grow the channel and grow the listeners, the followers on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you may be listening on. The YouTube channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. This episode will be going up as soon as this video is done recording, and we'll work on the Western Conference Finals. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I'm going to be enjoying these playoff games, but enjoy the rest of your day. Stay out.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the next big thing, the next up-and-coming sports journalist. Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
I want to thank you, yeah. I want to thank you. Ooh. For all the times you put up with me. Thank you. And you helped me retain my sanity. Thank you. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you. All I want to do is say thank you for everything.